Hey, how are you? Now, as you may know, I've been sharing stories, observations, and learnings from my career on LinkedIn, and I've been really humbled by the feedback I've had and how they have helped so many people. Following on, and with encouragement from friends and family, I've arrived at this point of hosting my own podcast, which for someone who has spent his career in radio and audio firmly outside the studio, this is scary new territory, but here goes. The For Real podcast is a series of conversations with colleagues and friends from the world of radio, audio, and communications, who I admire and respect, and who have helped, supported, and inspired me and many others over the years. They will share great stories, insight, and learning to help you find your real voice, your authentic self, and the confidence to own it. But before we get going, I want to thank my producer Alex Healy and my mates here at Distorted for hosting me in their fantastic studios in Leeds. Finally, there might be the odd effing and jeffing, but after all, this is For Real. Hey, and thank you so much for joining us again. And can I just say, your lovely comments about episode 1 with Nikki Patterson have been wonderful, very humbling, and you're very kind. My conversation today is with someone who has inspired me to be better ever since we first met 16 years ago, when I started work at the legendary Galaxy 105 in Leeds. As anyone who has had the privilege of being in Mike Cass's company, professionally or personally, will tell you, he is the real deal. Mike is a commercial radio tour de force, having held senior executive positions in Australia, Canada, and for all the major players here in the UK. Mike is currently content director of Virgin Radio UK, working with such broadcasting superstars as Chris Evans and Graham Norton, plus many more. But above all that, Mike is a dear friend and gives the best hugs ever. Hey, Mike, it's wonderful to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, having just revealed a remarkable list of just some of your professional accomplishments, I want to go back to your pre-radio days, if I may.
Sure.
As I said in this introduction, we've been friends for 16 years, but I had no idea you're a bit of a country dancing legend, particularly Morris dancing.
Yeah. So if you think I'm awkward and obstreperous now, the teenage version of me was much more so. And during A-level performing arts, studying at Cantthorpe College, there was a module on traditional dancing, traditional folk dancing. And the entire class wanted to do ballet. My body as a short, fat 13-year-old kid, I was 16-year-old kid then, really not into the thought of having to perform ballet. So I...
You in tights, no?
Well, I mean, what I get up to at the weekend. I ended up having an argument with the dance teacher saying that Morris dancing was actually older than ballet and probably suits the module better. She begrudgingly
That doesn't
agreed,
sound like you.
and then and decided that as punishment, as well as studying it and writing about it, I'd have to learn how to Morris dance and perform onto the class. So obviously not one to back down. When I've put myself into a corner, I ended up having to do a dance solo with a chair, because obviously Morris dancing you require various partners for, and that still remains the only performance of it. I mean, I practice in the privacy of my own home frequently, but the public performance was back in 1991.
Oh, if only social media and camera phones had been around then.
Exactly.
And I also learned that you engineered Kasabian's first ever public performance. I mean, wow.
Do you know, Cantthorpe College was an amazing place. I was lucky to work with, I was lucky to be a student at a time where we had a brilliant teacher called Mike Welsh, who inspired me in so many, many ways. And Kasabian were the kids in 2 years below me at college. So I did a lot of the sound engineering for college concerts. I engineered Labby Sifra's performance there. They weren't called Kasabian when they played, and I probably didn't appreciate the greatness that was on stage before me at that time. But it would have been true. I'd been there. More embarrassing for the band is that 2 of them were in my scout patrol at Scouts, but they don't, obviously probably don't remember that.
Were you patrol leader?
Of course.
Good man. As you mentioned, Mike Welsh there, and he's to blame for these little facts that I started off with. Onto your radio career then. How did that begin?
I remember being 13 and deciding that I wanted to be on the radio. I remember listening to my local station, which was Leicester Sound, and being fascinated by it and for everything. Back then, Radio 1 was broadcasting in medium wave, wasn't 24 hours a day. And that was the largest radio station. You know, everybody listened to Radio 1 on medium wave, 1053, 1089. It was on every radio in the house. And FM and stereo was kind of the domain of Radio 2 and local commercial stations. So the fact that you had something that sounded better, just I loved. I loved the fact that the quality of the music was great. Then you got into production jingles, and then you got into presenters talking rubbish between songs. And I kind of thought that's what I wanted to do. And it struck me as being one of those industries that you probably needed to have contacts, needed to know people and how to get in there. So I just worked out, how do I get a foot in the door? I arranged a school trip to go round and visit. From that, I got a couple of names. I then badgered the local paper, the Blaby Courier, if I could interview somebody on their behalf. Would they print it? They said yes. Then I got in touch with Leicester Sound saying, I work for the Blaby Courier. Can I interview you? Did the interviews with Kenny Haig, the breakfast presenter, and David Lloyd, who was the morning show presenter. Kenny's was very much his life story. David was a very straightforward yes, no interview. I asked them both if I could watch them do their shows. David gave me 15 minutes, sit there, don't touch anything, just observe. And Kenny was a little bit more laid back in the days when presenters played vinyl records, ads were on cartridges, and tea needed making. I saw a gap to be useful and kind of never looked back.
And what was it about radio that made you think that's what I wanted to do?
It's hard to look back and not force current memories on it,
Yeah.
but the ability to engage one person, to talk to one person, to change how that one person feels. You know, as a 13-year-old, I loved listening to them talking about places that I knew in Leicester. And it had bizarre now to talk about Leicester having a level of showbiz about it, but hearing these presenters talking about things that they did, the movies that they went to go and see at the ABC and the Odeon, things that I could go and do as well, it grabbed me. And that's always been the bit about radio that I've loved, and worry that from time to time we've occasionally lost track of. It's what's in it for the listener.
Yeah. I mean, and you showed a remarkable sense of determination at such a young age to orchestrate your way in.
I- Again, anyone who's ever met me probably knows that I am determined at times. I think that's the polite way of saying it. And it just struck me as something that I wanted to do. You know, there were very few universities offering degree courses. Whilst I had faith in my academic abilities to be able to get to university, it was something that, why not try and see what I could do now? I mean, by the time I was 15, I was working on sports programs at the weekend. I was skiving school for an hour or so in the morning to write travel news for the breakfast show. And because I was turning in all of my coursework on time, nobody really minded. They kind of saw it as an extended work experience. And when I was 17, they asked me to cover the presentation assistant's job for the summer. Lee Jane Benyon, I think her name was, she'd resigned and went off to work for UCB in Stoke. And they were going to advertise a job and wanted me to cover whilst they were doing that. And as I'm covering for it, I'm thinking, this is the job that if I do another year of A levels, 3 years of a degree, this is the job that I'd be applying for. And it's here now. So I applied, got it, and never looked back.
And was it, you talked about how they made you feel and those people related to you when you were listening to them, and they talked about places that you knew and were familiar with and how you connected with that. So was that you always wanting to be on air and be a presenter and be that kind of person?
Definitely always wanted to be on air when I was younger. Again, the geek in me really loved the idea of a sung name check, a 7-piece harmony. By the time I actually came on air, they were out of fashion and it was all about deep American voiceovers. But I remember those early days and realizing how much small things mattered to people, the things that people would pick up on and call the radio station. Way before mobile phones, way before GPS, people would rely on local radio for travel news. So people would call up to give tips, let you know what's going on, and they'd comment on something else that they'd heard on the show. Again, sounding incredibly old now, but shops weren't open 7 days a week, and they certainly were never open on Christmas Day. And toys, didn't come with batteries. So Leicester Sound would open its reception on Christmas morning and give away batteries to parents who'd forgotten to get them for their kids' presents. And to see people coming in full of Christmas joy, grateful that you could help solve, little Johnny's Christmas and get that sorted. But seeing that they'd break open a pack of four because they only needed two and somebody else might need the other two. To be out giving out candles when there was a power cut in Loughborough. And just those bits of realizing how much radio can build a relationship and you can end up being seen as a friend to the listener. The radio station had a really cheesy strapline of your 24-hour friend. But I really believed it. I mean, I was a presenter for a while, but I never only presented. I always ended up doing something else as well. And then that's when I realized that, there's probably even more fun to be had working on other shows, working on the whole radio station. And that's when I ended up uh, in a career in programming instead.
And I mean, when you've worked on three continents for some of the biggest commercial radio brands around, and with some of the greatest broadcasting talent who I've mentioned earlier, like Chris Evans and Graham Norton, and our good friend Stephanie Hurst, and many, many others. How do you help coach and develop them to become even better communicators than what they already are?
Great talent usually recognizes the fact that they don't know everything. And whilst they know what message they're trying to get across, you can help them maybe find a way of doing it in slightly different ways. Um, a good programmer is there to find excellent people, point them in a direction, and then get out of their way. Essentially, they're there to pick them up when they've fallen over the line, dust them down, put them back on track to make sure that they're not running in a completely wrong direction. And then when you're working with brilliant talent like Steph, Chris, and many other presenters that I've had the absolute pleasure of working with, it's just giving them a couple of different ways of maybe how they could have executed that link, getting them to think about the idea that they've got, and is it truly a good idea? Are you doing this for vanity, or you think there's something in this? What's in it for the listener? The amount of breakfast show outside broadcasts that I've heard that I'm sure have been absolutely phenomenal trips to the team and the people that have gone abroad to do it, but without realizing no one really wants to hear how blue the sea is, how crisp and golden the sand is, and how wonderful the sun is, and how it's 38 degrees whilst you're stuck in a traffic jam on the army gyratory with it pissing it down, and that mentality of we're here, you're not. When I got to uh, be the PD at Galaxy, I was the guy who cancelled a lot of the Ibiza outside broadcasts because Ibiza to me is all about the EDM scene, the clubs, being able to take some of that excitement and put it on the radio. So if you're not fortunate enough to be able to go to Ibiza, you can still enjoy it. It's not the mid-morning show coming live from there telling you how great their night out was the night before and how lovely their villa is. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do outside broadcasts. It's just turn around and work out what the listener's going to get out of it. Going back to that, be the listener's friend mentality. You know, you want to be the friend that can be relied upon, not the one that's forever bragging about how great they are, or the one that's forever cracking a joke, or the one that's telling you how wonderful their life is. There's no harm in letting people have a sneak peek behind, the red curtain, but it's not I'm here, you're not. It's not how important am I? I go to all of these events. It's oh my God, I've just seen what's behind here. Do you want to come have a sneak too? Remember that you're there to facilitate things for the listener. And that's something that when you're sat in front of a microphone and you're performing day in, day out, 3, 4 hours a day, it's easy to get caught up at times and not remember how can you potentially make this better. So great talent is always looking for feedback. And, I've been lucky to be able to give that to several.
For Real with Roger Cutsworth.
Go beyond the crash diet. Fight further than the fitness plan. To change your body for life, change your lifestyle. With the Wellness Mentor, you can benefit from years of experience in healthy eating, exercise, and mindset. Expert guidance in nutrition, motivation, body image transformation. Take control of your well-being and make changes that last. To find out more, see thewellnessmentor.co.uk. Make a change. Make it last with the Wellness Mentor.
Your space to create. Your place to focus. Your room to come together. The Hive, where ideas come to life and businesses flourish. Hot desks, offices and meeting rooms for whatever your day requires and whatever your business needs. Ideally placed just off the M62, minutes from Wakefield and Leeds. Your flexible working space. To book your space and to find out more, see thehivewakefield.co.uk. The Hive, where business comes together.
Handcrafted celebration cakes, made with the freshest of free-range ingredients, baked with care and attention, beautifully designed and sculpted by our master cake decorator. Whatever you're celebrating, whatever you want to say it with Cake by Tiffany Cakes. Made with love, for you to share and enjoy with the ones you love. To see our stunning designs and for an individual quote, search Handcrafted Celebration Cakes on Facebook. Say it with Cake. Tiffany Cakes.
For Real with Roger Cutsworth.
So picking up on that and that immense privilege and your sense of what great radio does and what great communicators do in terms of giving them that sneak behind the curtain, that look on things. I mentioned in the introduction that you continue to inspire me to be better. And you've done that for so many different people. But when you knocked on the head those Ibiza shows, etc., you can't have been that popular.
Oh, no, not in the slightest. You've taken away a free holiday from several people. They're not going to love you for that. And, I'm sure there are many presenters that I've worked with who are listening to this going, it wasn't that bloody nice in the meetings. You're never going to, radio is wonderfully subjective. There is never one right answer. If there was, one radio station would have 100% reach and have cleaned up by now. Yeah. But there isn't one radio station. The largest radio station in the UK is actually the largest radio station in Europe, Radio 2. Yeah, and everyone looks at its 14 million-ish audience with envy and wants a slice of it. But the reality is, with over 50 million people listening to radio in the UK, there is space for everyone and everything. People have different groups of friends and enjoy them for different reasons. I think reminding people about what you think your listeners are into is always going to be a subjective conversation. And over the years, I've become more open to listening to what other people's thoughts are on that, because you realize you don't have all of the right answers. I've loved the fact that actually, whilst I've been lucky enough to work with the teams who have the right answers, they're not all mine. They don't need to be all mine. They just need to make sure that they've jumped the threshold to make sure that we're doing it because it's right, not because we want to.
So how did 16-year-old Mike, listening to Leicester Sound when it started and thinking, I want to be able to do that, how did you go from there to being able to be confident enough in yourself and your own self worth and identity to be able to make those decisions, and also to be able to sit in front of people and go, have you thought about it this way? Have you thought about it that way? Is that something that was a conscious thing you developed over time, or did that come naturally to you?
The younger me would ask a lot of questions from people. why do you do it that way? And keep asking why until I got a slightly better answer. And probably didn't offer much of my own opinion other than to just question, yeah, but do you not think that does that?
Yeah.
Just so I could try and understand it all. And then you take everything that you learn from people. Some of it you try and emulate, some of it you try desperately to avoid. One of the best teachers I ever had as a PD was actually the worst PD I ever worked for. And no, I won't tell you who it is. But I remember being a presenter thinking, I will hopefully never make my presenters feel like that. I'm not sure I can put my hand on my heart and say I've succeeded in it, but you learn a little bit from everybody. And as you get older, you realize that you're working with people who are asking you those questions. I love it when somebody new starts because you get a chance to have your thinking questioned and challenged again. And you either win that person over with your reasoning, or they'll point something out that you've not thought of, or things have moved on and things have changed. And you then get a chance to tweak that thought process. Radio's changed immensely over the 30 years that I've worked in it. And a lot of the great practitioners have also changed their thought process as well. Back in the early 90s, it was very much a memory game trying to get ticks in a radar diary. Now we can tell you exactly how long you've listened on your app and where you were when you listened. And if you've logged in, we also probably know your name, your date of birth, and we can sell a commercial that mentions who you are and the fact that we know you're into cars and what garage has got a sale on near you. So you need to continually evolve and not be afraid that your thinking can be updated. Um, and I think when you realize that radio is so subjective and there aren't just one answer, there's many right answers. I think that's when it becomes slightly easier for it to become a conversation with people.
And did you have to um, change how you were when you worked in Australia and then in Canada? Was the culture different there? So you felt you needed to change, or was it a question of changing those people to your will?
Um, there is a wonderful phrase that a consultant called Dennis Clark told me. Dennis has worked with so many great people in radio, both in the UK, but predominantly in the States. He worked with Rick Dees, he works with Ryan Seacrest, Elvis Duran. If there is a key American radio talent, chances are they've been coached by Dennis. So you're chatting away to him about his thoughts on everything and asking for, tips, how can you learn, and he'll remind you that it's the same shit with a different logo. um, the joy of working overseas, bizarrely, you don't have to change much at all. You actually get the chance to be the person that can ask stupid questions and get away with more stupid questions because people aren't as defensive. They don't think that you're asking, why do you do it that way? Because you're having a go at them, or you're about to tell them that they're doing it wrong. They'll sit there and assume that it's potentially a cultural thing, or that you don't understand that reference because you didn't watch that TV show or you didn't grow up here. And so they're a lot more open to just cutting straight to why they're doing it that way. And then you can go, oh, right, what about this? Or what about that? And because they're not defensive, they're more open to changing their mentality as opposed to we've always done this.
So you've always had that naturally inquisitive mind and just been able to question. So going into a new market and be able to go, okay, I can just ask a load more questions and find out things must have been a real joy.
Yeah. There's a great phrase. I think it's one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. I wish I was smart enough to read more books, but I'm sure this is one of them. It's seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I can't tell you what age I learned that, but my life became a lot easier when I did.
Yeah.
When I didn't just belligerently sit there and go, no, we're doing it this way. That will get you so far. And I'm sure there'll be a world of people happily to turn around and question whether I've ever changed. But there is that mentality that listen and try and find out as much as you can, then offer your opinion.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a couple of great people, David Lloyd, You just mentioned Dennis. Who who would you say have been the biggest influences on your career?
I mean, Kenny Haig was that first person to open the door and let a 13-year-old play in a radio station. And I know he got in trouble for it, but he saw something in me that he felt was worth spending time on. And that's led to, me having the most lucky career working in some amazing places with some amazing people. So he'd definitely be on the list. Other great bosses include Martin Healy. Martin was the first managing director to take a chance on me as a program director. Um, at the time, I was a deputy PD that couldn't get to the next level. Internally, I'd gone for so many jobs, and for whatever reason, um, I was classed as being a bit of a troublemaker or not being commercially minded enough or being too keen to offer his opinion first rather than to listen. And Martin again saw something and gave me a chance to be a PD. And that was just phenomenal. And I absolutely loved it. There's been so many people that have helped and have tweaked and have nudged things along the way. I literally could sit here and give a huge long list, but I'd fear I'd miss someone. And I think just mentioning two, I'm going to upset some people there.
Yeah.
But it's the people who took a risk or backed you because they saw something are the ones that I'm most grateful for. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I hopefully do the same. Um, because of how Kenny and David let this kid into the radio station, I make sure I try and do as much with student radio as I can wherever I am to give my opinion on a demo, regardless of whether it's for Virgin or it's for another radio station, to try and help somebody achieve what they want to achieve, to try and push people to follow the things that excite them and make them want to do something that will be wonderful for them. I've been the recipient of that, and I hope that I've been a guardian and pushed that myself.
Just one more thing.
We try and finish every episode with something that I call the Colombo moment. It's that one last thing or that one nugget, that one piece of advice that you've learned that you'd share with people listening to us today. That one bit of advice to help them be better, to help them in their career. That one bit that helped you that could maybe help them.
If I can narrow it down to one, you'll be lucky. There is the old adage, never eat the food a listener sends in. But probably the one that has been most helpful for me is to make no an unacceptable answer. Most people want to be nice. No one sets out to be an arsehole. It just doesn't happen. But it's easy to say no to things if you make it easy. If you're a 15-year-old who emails Aled Jones, head of Radio 1, and says, "Dear Aled, I think I'd be great to do the breakfast show. I can start Monday." Aled can say no without batting an eyelid. But if you're that 15-year-old who really wants to get into radio, and you really want to work at Radio 1, Greg James is great at giving advice, and I'm sure, answers a lot of emails about how to do that. His producers equally so. Think around the problem. How do you get one step closer to it? If the journey from A to B is too far a leap to make in one step, what are the individual steps that you can do to get there? I famously got misquoted at a student radio conference when I told people to not just aim for the top. Mike Cass apparently said, "Don't aim for the top." My point was, don't just aim for the top. Think of the journey along the way. Make no the unreasonable answer. when people get in touch and say, I would love to work at your radio station or do work experience, I'll do anything. That doesn't help, because most radio stations don't have a lot of people about. So taking on work placements, interns, or just trying to narrow down how you can help somebody get that one step further is hard if they don't know what that one step is. Ask a direct question. Don't be afraid, because if that one person says no, there'll be someone else who does say yes. So make no an unacceptable answer to give. And if you can think about that, you'll always be able to get the next step closer to where you want to be.
Well, thank goodness no was not the answer you gave me to this interview. So it's been a delight. Thank you. And thank you for sharing all your wisdom with me over the years and with people listening to this. Mike, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Roger.